The train conductor punched my ticket and said, "Get off at the next stop. Don't ask questions, just go." Tom Brennan's hands were shaking as he handed me back my ticket, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning that kept the passenger car at a comfortable 72 degrees. I'd been riding the Colorado Mountain Express to Denver for 3 years, every month for the Torino case depositions, and Tom had never looked at me with that kind of desperate fear before. "Is everything all right?" I asked, noting the way his eyes kept darting toward the other passengers in the business class car. 3 men in expensive suits, all carrying identical leather briefcases, all reading newspapers with the concentrated attention of people trying very hard to look normal. "Please, Mr. Castellanos," Tom whispered, his voice barely audible over the rhythmic clacking of wheels on rails as we climbed through the Rocky Mountains. "Trust me on this. Get off at Glenwood Springs. Take the next train tomorrow." I studied his face, looking for signs of the kind of breakdown that sometimes hit railroad employees after too many years of dealing with demanding passengers and impossible schedules. But Tom's fear seemed specific, focused, the kind that came from knowing something terrible was about to happen and being powerless to prevent it. "Tom, I can't miss this hearing. The Torino trial starts Monday, and if I'm not there to testify about the financial records, Vincent walks free." I kept my voice low but firm. "This is the biggest organized crime case in Colorado history." Tom's expression crumpled, and for a moment I thought he might break down completely. "Then God help us all," he muttered, and walked quickly toward the front of the car, his conductor's uniform rumpled and his stride unsteady. I settled back into my seat, trying to focus on the legal briefs spread across my fold-down table. As a forensic accountant, I'd spent 18 months tracing Vincent Torino's money laundering operations through offshore accounts and shell companies. The evidence I'd uncovered would put him away for life, along with half the organized crime families in the western United States. The train curved through a particularly scenic section of canyon, and I glanced up from my work to admire the view. That's when I noticed the 3 men in suits weren't reading their newspapers anymore. They were all looking at me with the kind of professional assessment that made my blood run cold. The man nearest to me folded his paper and stood up, adjusting his jacket in a way that revealed the shoulder holster underneath. He was tall, lean, with the kind of pale complexion that suggested he spent most of his time indoors. His companions remained seated, but their posture had shifted to something more alert, more predatory. "Mr. Castellanos," the tall man said, his voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place immediately, "we need to discuss some irregularities in your testimony preparation." I didn't recognize him from the prosecution team, and federal prosecutors didn't make house calls on moving trains. "I'm sorry, who are you?" I asked, my hand moving instinctively toward my phone to call my contact at the FBI field office. "Someone who represents interests that would prefer certain financial records remain confidential." He sat down across from me without invitation, his pale eyes never leaving my face. "We understand you've been very thorough in your investigation of Mr. Torino's business affairs." The train began to slow as we approached what should have been a straight section of track, and I could hear the conductor announcing an unscheduled stop due to a medical emergency. But the way the tall man smiled when he heard the announcement told me this wasn't a coincidence. "What kind of medical emergency?" I asked, though I was already starting to understand that Tom's warning had been about more than just missing my court date. That's when the other passengers started collapsing. Full story on my channel and linked below.